This is Joe from Bro Joe Builds, and I know it's been a while since I recorded almost anything, and the last couple of videos have been either update videos or some shorts, but I really have been showcasing what I've really been doing in here in the last year already. But I'm more ready now than I've been, and with that, enough for excuses. There will be some updates on some other engines and stuff like that that I have done in the past. Maybe I show some right now. So let's talk about building a small block Chevy, but not just any small block Chevy. So, you know, the more popular 350, I think everyone knows what 350 is, or even a 400 base build, which are still somewhat popular. 327s, popular. You know, stroke 350 at 383, very popular. How about the high winding 302 or 327 small journal motors that were made popular, especially in the early days of drag racing and Trans Am. But there were other small lot Chevys that were considered less desirable that GM made during these times. And during that time period, meaning from 1955 to 2006, they made a lot of these motors. But during a particular time, they were trying to compete with the economy cars coming out of Japan. And they were trying everything they can to make this big V8 in comparison not guzzle as much gas. So in doing so, they came out with motors like the 305, the 307. Well, the 307 not so much, it was a low performance motor, but it was still a smaller displacement, not as desirable motor. But there was one motor in particular that they only made for just a couple of years, and it was probably the worst V8 small block Chevy they ever produced, especially in a performance standpoint. It was kind of a failure across the board because it didn't really do well at saving gas because it was underpowered trying to move a boat. And that motor is this. It's a Chevy 267. And again, probably the header gave it away already. But the small block Chevy 267 is by far the oddest small block Chevy they made. And in this video, I want to just go over some of the oddities that you'll find in this motor because it's not like your normal small block Chevy. Now, as we walk up on the engine, one of the telltale signs specifically for this motor is the cylinder head. And on the cylinder head, you have these two markings, those two peaks. These cylinder heads only came on this motor for one particular reason. This engine has not a 4-inch bore, not a 3 3/4-inch bore. It has a 3.5-inch bore. It's the only small block Chevy that has a bore that small. So it's very unique. The cylinder head is designed for this tiny little bore, and the stroke on this motor, oddly enough, is a 350 stroke. So the 3.0 4/8 stroke, but it has a super tiny bore. So it's not ideal for performance. You really can't throw a big valve in it, which means you can't throw a big head on it, which means you can't really make a ton of power. So, at least, theoretically, right? So we're gonna look at some more different. As I walk up on the engine, you're like, oh, it has a quadrajet or a quadrajet style carburetor. And as we turn to the side, we'll see that we're missing part of our quadrajet. So this is only a 2-barrel, literally a 2-barrel, you could say quadrajet style carburetor. So again, in their gas saving efforts, they decided to stay with 2-barrel and a 2-barrel quadrajet type carb. As I was looking over the side of the motor, I also noticed this. So this engine has a provision for a driver's side dipstick, so like the older blocks. So it has a 2-piece rear main seal. It has the provision, but it's blocked off. And I believe boat motors, had the oil pan with the dipstick in it. So more like a boat or probably certain trucks or whatnot. Instead of having a dipstick on the block here, it's on the pan here. Other than that, visually, as of right this moment, I don't see any other differences. This motor came out of a buddy of mine's street rod pickup. It was just a motor that it was put in there just to move the vehicle around, and he pulled it out, asked if I wanted it. I said absolutely, and I picked it up. So right now, this motor, depending on what we decide to do with it, is just a freebie. And, we'll see what we get into one step at a time. As I pull the valve covers off, nothing stands out as anything different on this motor, or at least on this side, because I went to the other side and we may have found out why this motor is running a little lousy. It looks like it popped the rocker off, so there might be something going on in this cylinder over here, but we'll take a look at that much later. But everything visually looks the same so far. We'll pull the intake manifold off. It does have, someone put, this intake manifold definitely was off at some point. Someone put performance style 12-point fasteners on it. The fasteners are probably worth more than the motor at this point. Alright, intake off, water pump off of it now. And looking at this motor at this state right now, you would not really even be able to tell, other than the markings, that this isn't a small block 350, 305, where there's no real obvious signs. Actually, speak of it, the timing mark is up here up the top, which is a 305 thing. So if anything, you probably think this will be a 305 if you was just looking to grab a motor or whatnot. There's no sign right now that it's anything else. Even the ports look like a stock GM port layout. Doesn't look any smaller, really, at least at first glance. I mean, it's definitely the smaller of the factory ports, but it's not like, hey, look at me, this is bad. Or, I won't say bad, but this is low performance. So, we'll keep digging in further and get these heads off. And I think that's where we're going to really see what makes this thing different and unique. So, right before I pulled these heads off and started unbolting the heads, I caught something. These valve springs are the smallest valve springs I ever seen on a small block Chevy. And I could physically, I mean, if you could hear that, push the springs down. I don't remember, maybe I haven't built too many stock base 350s in a while. I have one on the shelf. I want to see if I can push the springs down later. But these springs feel significantly lighter. I'll say that. It kind of makes sense. I'm gonna imagine that these valves are really small, and you know, being that they're really small, you don't need that much spring to control them. Obviously, this cam is minute. Okay, got the heads off it, and I was able to see some differences right away. But I have a stock 882 head out here, and I didn't even look at the number, but the stock 267 head right here. Now, these heads pretty much run engines of the same era. 882 head will come on a 350. They came on Corvettes. They came in Camaros. They came on everything from like the mid 70s well into the 80s. Well, this head only came on the 267. So on the outside, looking at the exhaust ports, it looks like the same head. Meaning they look like they're interchangeable. My suspicion prior, these springs are definitely lighter than these springs. I could literally squeeze these springs, probably not like this, but if I put pressure from this end, I could squeeze these springs. These springs take a lot more force to do the same thing. So, these springs are definitely much more light duty than even the factory, 350, springs. But when we turn the head over, that's when we start to see some differences. So I got my junky calipers out. So right away, the size of the chamber, you can tell right away. This chamber, just the width of the chamber is, let's see if we get a measure. I'm doing this with one hand. So we're at, I don't know, 3/600, give or take. And we come over here, you see that it doesn't even come close. I mean, the stock 882 chamber, again, I'm roughing it out, is pretty much right where the bore is, about 4 inches. So literally the chambers are relative to the bore. This is about 3.5 inch, width of the chamber, and this is about 4 inch for wherever their prospective bore was going to be. The other thing is the valve size. This intake valve is tiny, and maybe in the next video I had the valves out of the head and we could do a proper measurement, but or even just look on the internet. This looks to be, I'm just eyeballing here, 1 3/4, for the intake valve, and that exhaust valve, I mean, it's hard to quantify how much smaller it is. It honestly, this ain't gonna fit in there. I'll pull the valves out in the next one, and we'll actually get a valve size difference between the two heads. But it looks to be 1 3/4 inch, and I have tiny. Wow, this is probably, I'm guessing, is gonna be a 194 intake or even a 184 intake valve and a 1.5 exhaust valve. Again, we'll pull the valves out and we can compare the two here. And overall, though, the architecture is the same. Technically, these heads would swap over. You will never want to put this head on a 267 for many reasons, and the chamber alone will probably kill the compression. I don't know what compression is on this motor, but I know, gas crunch area, it has to have been somewhere 8-to-1 or so. And by putting this chamber in, you'll have almost no compression. That being said, how do the pistons look like? They look like this. And in comparison, I'm assuming this is all standard bore. This is a standard small block 350 piston. The size difference is, again, and this is just stock stuff, so it really shows how small this stuff is. I think for this one we're gonna end it here, and it's already a little late, so tomorrow I'll finish pulling this thing the rest of the way, and we'll see what other surprises that this engine has in store. So with that being said, I hope to be a little bit more active on here for you guys and show you a little bit more of this 267 and everything else in here. Like my dad's Camaro, that's already running, is almost ready to go to track, and I'll be going to the track with this car very, very soon. And I'm pretty the Chevette in the background. It's right now as a storage device, but I'm hoping to be getting working on it soon. It just, life's. So thanks, Projo Bills. Like, share, and subscribe.